Guys, you're gonna get as much out of this as you put into it. If you choose to talk, if you choose to be distracted, then one of the things I have to ask you is how happy you were with the grade you just got.
Good.
Because it was generally reflective of the kinds of concepts that are gonna be on your final exam. It didn't include everything. I mean, the final exam is an hour and a half long test. This is only a 40-minute test. And bless you, not every question is necessarily going to be on your final exam, but I would say it's probably 3/4. It's probably like about half to a little bit more than half of your final exam, maybe a little bit less than half. So if you got an 85 or higher and you're saying, man, I did great, then that's a wonderful thing. But if you got a grade that you're somewhat disappointed in, then you really need to learn how to do these questions. And if you're going to be distracted, if you're not gonna be focused, then you again, if I was to write a book, if I was to go on a blog or write an article or put it up on the web, hey, here's how you fail your course, here's how you fail your final. Lenny, face forward, put your knees under your desk. Let's go.
All right.
Right, yes, we're in a, Lenny, what do you think I'm gonna say? There we go. It's for your own good, Lenny. I don't want you tripping as you walk down the hall. Lenny, your knee's not under the desk again. I know it's very hard to do two things at once. Thank you. Now, my fear is, you know, it's incredible, but my experiences with younger people like yourselves who are trying to put your lives together and who are trying to really do something, that you'll end up failing to reach the final, or you'll end up going to summer school or whatever, and you will look right at yourself, and you will say, I'm stupid. You say, that's why I failed. I failed because I'm stupid. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because we both know that if I stood here right now and said to you, I will give you a brand new car of your choice, and I will give you $50,000, you can pass. We both know that you would do any and all things necessary to pass. The truth is that if you're failing, you just don't want to pass because it's not important enough to you. And it's been like that for a long time. So you end up failing not because you weren't born with brain power, but you end up failing because you weren't born with willpower. And it's up to you to decide what's the most important thing to you. Is it more important to daydream, be distracted, think about other things, be what you think other kids think is cool? But I'm here to tell you that deep down inside, while they may find, you know, those kind of things cool on one level, they find it a whole lot cooler to think that one day someone's gonna be really successful. And in their heart, they're like, man, I wanna be successful, and I want the cool car, I want the cool house, I want the vacations, I want all that kind of stuff. And you know what? I do realize that if I don't do well with something, that I'm not gonna make that kind of money, and that I'm not gonna live like that. So ultimately, they do respect the other kind of cool. You may not see it too much yet, but I promise it's coming. Usually happens around late sophomore, early junior year of high school. Kids' priorities change. Now, you're either gonna spend your summer in the Patchogue Medford High School, sitting in the classroom for 2 hours per period, not 1 hour per period, or you're gonna succeed. And I'm here to tell you that success is not a function of how much brain power you were born with. There are some people in here who were born, there's some people in every class who were born extra good at math. That's a fact. And they get it easy, and they're lucky. And there are some kids for whom math is just really a struggle. But that doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means they gotta work a little harder at it. And then finally, there's everybody in between. So there might be 2 or 3 kids who are extra smart. And there might be 2 or 3 kids who have to work extra hard. And then there's everybody in between. And just about every one of you is somebody in between. And you either have to decide that you're willing to pay the price to succeed, or else when you fail, understand that what's gotten you to fail is because you weren't willing to pay the price. That's what made you fail. And that, folks, is not an indictment of your brain power. That is an indictment of your character, and your heart, and your guts, and your priorities. Now, sitting in front of you is your test. So what I'll do is I'll go through questions one at a time and ask you if you want to go over any of these questions. Now, you do have a test this Friday coming up, and each day's work that you do in here is going to be graded as a quiz. So there are still lots of opportunities to improve your grade between now and our last day of classes, which is Monday. What we do today is the same thing that we're going to do Monday. We're going to take the test, go piece by piece, and ask you if there's anything you want to go over on that test. So is there anybody who wants to go over the first question? Dave, you want to do it?
Yes.
All right. So let's go through, and first things first, we want to graph this particular triangle. So it says triangle CAS with coordinates C, -1, 4. A is -3, 1. And S, which is -4, 3. That's it. So that's triangle CAS. So the first thing you should do is look on your paper and make sure you drew the same exact triangle for CAS. If you didn't, then that means you might be reversing your coordinates. All right, and it's, you know, we've been doing it for a while, but if you did have an issue with that, there's extra help Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and come on into extra help, and we'll go over it, and we'll get it all straightened out so we can get it going. Now, a lot of kids did get full credit on this, but not quite as many lost a bunch of points because they messed up where they were reflecting and what they were doing it over. It says reflected over the y-axis. Guys, which one's the y-axis? Everybody? The vertical, right? The up and down. This is the y-axis. Remember, you can kind of make a y out of that line there? So I want to reflect this over the y-axis. So I'm going to do count and repeat. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 to match up with the 4 over there. And that gives me A prime, C prime, S prime. So the first mistake I saw is a number of people reflected over the x-axis. That put the graph down here. That would have been a mistake. So the ones I saw reflected well. They just reflected over the long line. So you know how to reflect. You just got to be really careful when you read the question as to which line it is that you're reflecting over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, next thing we're going to do is a dilation. And, oh, you see this stuff here about writing the coordinates down? You have to fill that in, and that's very important. Basically, what we're going to get is C prime is going to be 1, 4. A prime is going to be 3, 1. And S prime is going to be 4, 3. So now we go to the double primes. To do the double prime, you're going to take the red triangle. It's very important you take the red one. See how it says dilate, and then it says the one with the primes, triangle C prime, A prime, S prime. It says dilate that by a factor of 2. So you're going to multiply all of that by 2. And the easiest way to do it is take these coordinates you just put here and multiply everything by 2. So that's 2, 8. Then it's 6, 2. And then it's 8, 6. And then just go up to the graph and plot those points. Here's 2, 8. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be C double prime. And then there's 6, 2, which is here. So that's A double prime. And then there's 8, 6. 8, 3, 6. S double prime. And there is the question completely done. Okay? Now again, I don't think that's particularly difficult. Now I wouldn't say it's a super easy, but on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 3 or a 4, maybe a 5 at worst. And my experience is that as long as kids pay attention to which line they're going to flip over, and they write their coordinates down so that they can multiply everything by 2, that kids do really well with this kind of question. So if you got a disappointing grade and you mess this question up, I'm pretty confident you can go home tonight, you can work at it. And when you work at it, you'll come in tomorrow and you'll be better at it. And you'll be, this question will be something you can earn a lot of points on, these transformation geometry questions, okay? All right, any questions, final questions about this? All right. It's a little delayed here. All right. What is this thing, like magnetized? All right, so the next one says, solve the following system of equations for x and y. And I was really proud of you guys because I realized I made a mistake and that the answer didn't work out to a nice clean number. Now that doesn't mean you can't do the problem. It just means the answer's a little ugly and then every kid starts thinking to themselves that they did something wrong. But as I went through this, you guys rocked this question. You did really, really well. The first thing worth noting here is that the y's match up and that one's a positive, one's a negative, so die. That gives me 5x is equal to 12, and then divided by 5. Now, one or two people didn't show work here. If I don't see work, I assume you cheated. And that means you can't go getting points out of the deal. So make sure that you show work on something like that. So I come up with x is 2.4. And as I said, the majority of you guys, the vast majority, got this question right. You gotta go back and figure out why. I'll do 4 times x plus y is 11. So 4 times 2.4, substituting in, plus y is 11. 4 times 2.4 is 9.6, plus y is 11, minus the 9.6, y is 1.4. And that's the correct answer for that one. Yes?
Do you know if in the finals are going to be like points?
I don't feel comfortable saying too much about what's on the final. What I do feel comfortable about is this. As long as you're doing the process correctly, you'll be able to manage any question they give to you. So focus on the process, not the outcome. Okay? All right, next one. Tabitha has a cylindrical fish tank. Diagram below. You know, I just got done making up the answers to the test that my algebra kids took today, and as part of the answers, I put up how the state wants things graded. And there was literally a question like this for the algebra reasons that said, if the kids put the correct answer down and don't show any work, give them 0. Because again, they're gonna think, they're telling us, assume the kid cheated. Don't give them any credit for it. They need to show work as to how they got the answer. Now, the equation for this is v equals pi r squared h. And first off, many of you got it right. If I looked at the class's grades, there were basically 2 halves to how the class worked out. Kids who got about 75 and higher, and it was about half the class, and then kids who got below 60. And that was probably about a third of the class, and the other kids mixed in between. And the kids who did not as well as the 75 or higher, what happened on this particular question is they reversed the 7 and the 2. It says here the volume is pi times r squared h. What do you think the h stands for? Height. What do you think the r stands for? Radius. So which things in that diagram do you think are height and radius?
7 is height.
7 is height. But if you look at your paper, the people who missed this put the 7 in for r. That was their mistake. So this becomes pi times 2 squared times 7. And when you multiply that all out, it says the nearest cubic meter, and you guys did a very good job of recognizing that you should round to the nearest whole number. It works out to, I believe, 88?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any questions there?
No.
Now, the next one is a really good example of what I mean when I say to you that performance is a function of preparation, and that no one, and I mean nobody, should miss this question, because this is a phenomenally easy question. Yes? Not now. I think you used all 5 passes. I'm not sure. So, yeah, and this is the consequences. And just like you have consequences that you used up those freebies earlier in the year, and now you're gonna have to sit there doing the pee-pee dance, well, likewise, if you don't, not just you, but collectively, don't take this seriously, there are consequences at the end of the year. Now, Alex, Matt, whenever we see a right triangle, one right triangle, all by itself, at this point in time, what you should be thinking about is right angles, the hypotenuse, and also the fact that leg squared plus what? leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. And you have to recognize that situation. You know, one day you're gonna drive a car. And when you drive that car, you're gonna be expected to understand, for the sake of everybody else on the road, that when you see a red light, you're expected to stop. And you're supposed to know that you hit the brake, and you're supposed to know that the brake is either the middle pedal, if it's a standard shift car, or if it's an automatic transmission, the pedal on the left. You're expected to know that, and you're expected to stop that vehicle. Well, likewise, you're expected to recognize that this is a right triangle. And in a right triangle, if we're missing one of the sides, to find that side, we do the Pythagorean theorem, which is leg squared plus leg squared is hypotenuse squared. Now, that's not complicated. In all honesty, you know, if I paid you to train a kid younger than you to do this, you could do it, and you would make the money, because it's not hard. The two legs make up the right angle, that's why I put an H here, short for hypotenuse. So 4 squared plus 12 squared is, I'm gonna leave it H for hypotenuse squared. 16 plus 144 is hypotenuse squared. That's 160 is hypotenuse squared. And now I square root both sides. And what I saw grading the test was, there were some kids who had no clue. Absolutely no clue how to do this. And there were some kids who were perfect at it. It was very, very easy for them. And they rocked it out and got it right. And then there were the ones who had no clue. They really need to relearn the whole thing and get extra help. But then there were kids who got to this point and they kind of got stuck and they didn't know what to do. You need to do the square root in your calculator. Now let me remind you how to do that.
It's second.
It's second and the x squared button, because the square root is right above x squared. So do second and then the x squared button, and then type 160. And then hit enter or equals. And what does it say? 12 point what?
6494.
And I think it says round to the nearest tenth,
Yes.
so it'll be 12.6. Okay? Now, you know, each day you get a worksheet when you come in here, and usually there's at least one Pythagorean theorem question on there. Now, if you practice every day between now and your final exam how to do square roots, you'll get it right on your test. But if you don't practice it every day and you either copy off another kid's paper or try to take the easy way out and so on and so forth, well, then what's going to happen is that you are not going to understand or get it right on the final, and you're going to lose points. Performance is a function of preparation. Alex, pay attention. Alex, attention is not looking that way. Are you in love? Yeah, there's something over there that's definitely got your attention. Now, let's focus this way. Okay, the next question, you guys rocked on. Absolutely rocked. The class, even the kids who struggled and didn't get a very high grade got this question right, which is a testimony to how hard you worked all year long with equations. 5 times 2x is 10x, minus 20 equals 5x, plus 7 plus 2x. Then we got a same side situation on the right here. So that's 10x minus 20 equals 7x plus 7. Opposite side, opposite operation. 3x minus 20 is 7. Add 20. Die. 3x is 27. Divide by 3. X is 9. So again, I would say probably pushing 80 to 90% of you got full credit on that question. And if you didn't get full credit, you got a significant amount of partial credit. So we looked very good on that question, all right? Any problems? All right, so now let's go to the next one. And I've mentioned this many, many times. One of the reasons why I give quizzes every single day, just about, is that I am continually amazed at how much I don't understand, Lenny. I am continually amazed at how I misread what you're good at and what you're not good at. So often I think, man, they got this down pat. They're gonna rock. And then you struggle with it. And so often I say to myself, oh man, they're gonna struggle with this. And then you end up getting a really good grade on it. This is a question I thought everybody would get right. I thought every person in the room would just crush this question. And the truth is that we didn't do anywhere near that well. There were individuals who did, and probably a little less than half the class, But I thought it was so easy, the whole class would do well. I would think I could give it to 7th and 6th graders and they could do well. Look at the table. What am I going up by? 3. So what's 1 plus 3?
4.
And what's 4 plus 3?
7.
All right, so that's worth about 3 points out of the 10. Then it says, plot the points. Okay, -4, -5, -4, 2, 4, 5, -2, -2, 0, 1, 2, 4, and 4, 7. There's my line. That's the next part. I just plot the points, connect the dot. And then it says, what's the slope? Well, there's 2 ways we could figure out the slope. One way is by looking at the table. What am I going up by over here again? 3. What am I going up by here? 2. Some people forgot to look for what the x was going up by. Now remember, the slope is change in y, also called the rate of change. Change in y over change in x. The change in the y's is 3. The change in the x's is 2's. So the slope is 3 over 2. But let's say that you wanted it to confirm your answer, or you wanted to do it a different way. Well, I can look at the graph, and I can go from point to point. I gotta go up 3 over 2. So it's 3 over 2. Up 3 over 2. So the slope works out to be 3 over 2, either way you do it. Yes?
How much was that question mark?
I think each one of these was worth 10. And then we got to the part ones and they were each worth 5. And basically, the way I graded, for the most part, if it was about half right, on rare occasion, I gave 5 points out of 10. But for the most part, Lenny, can we stop? For the most part, what I asked myself was 1 of 2 things. Was it more right than wrong, or was it more wrong than right? If it was more wrong than right, I gave you 3 points out of 10. And if it was more right than wrong, I gave you 7 points out of 10. If it was perfect, I gave you 10 out of 10. And if it was, what the heck is that? Then I gave you 0 out of 10. Right? All right. So, next one. Hey, listen, how many times have we seen a question like this? A lot. A lot. And what it's really getting at is, do you understand what rate of change is? And can you find it the 3 ways that it's possible to find the rate of change? Well, the answer to that is, as a class, no. I would hope that we would be a little better. One of the things that I said to you guys earlier in the year when we gave this on a series of 2 quizzes in a row was you have to make sure that you're showing, like work, what each slope is, what each rate of change. So come over here. What's this going up by? The y's is going up by 2. So what's the x is going up by? 3. So remember, change in y, or change in f of x, over change in x, that slope is 2/3. Now let's look at the middle one. Let's go point to point. This is going up 3 over 2. So this slope is 3/2. And on this one, I need to get the y by itself. That gives me 3y equals 2x plus 2. Then I divide by 3. And what's the slope here? 2 over 3. So the first question says, which one has the greatest rate of change? Which is the biggest number? 2/3, 3/2, or 2/3? 3/2. If you're not sure about that, what I would suggest that you do is just take your calculator and convert them all to decimals. 2/3 is 0.6 repeating. 3/2 is 1.5. So clearly, the fraction with the greatest rate of change, is 2. And then, which pairs of function have the same rate of change? Well, 1 and 3 have the same rate of change. They're each 2/3. And then I would write they are each 2/3. Josh?
I have a question, Mike, but I accidentally, on line 2, I put 6 over 4, then if, like, because I didn't know there's another one there. So if I were to put that in the final exam, would I get that wrong?
If you put 6 over 4, but you did recognize that it was the greatest rate of change, you would get it right. Because 6 over 4 is equivalent. Davis, question?
Never mind.
Okay. All right, so those were all of the 10-point questions. And listen, in all honesty, if you look at those questions, I don't think I did anything that was overly difficult or overly dramatic. And here's the other thing. How many times have you seen those questions? You've seen them a lot. Or questions like that, questions with similar content. Rate of change, Pythagorean theorem, reflections, dilations, equations, multiple step equations. We've been doing those for so long. If you're not getting them right, it does not mean that you're stupid. It just means that you, in your youth, have made the decision that this isn't worth knowing. And the only thing I gotta say to you, this is a really, really scary thing. And if you were sitting down right now, or if you were sitting at home, and your parents were watching this with you, they would look at you and say that the words that I'm about to say are so very true. But you will live with the consequences of your decisions. You will live with them for the rest of your life. And the hardest thing about being young, and by young I describe that as up to about 24 or 5 years old. The hardest part about being young is you make these decisions that will be forever, and the consequences are a really big deal. For example, Chris is sleeping, can you wake him up? Come on, Chris, let's go. And it is your life, and you have the right to make these decisions, but at the end of the day, you also are the one who can make yourself suffer. All right, so we take a look at this graph. What does this look like here, guys? Reflection, definitely. So it's going to be a line reflection, choice C. Next one, triangle A prime, B prime, C prime is the image of triangle ABC under a transformation. It's similar, but it's not congruent. What does the word congruent mean?
Same.
Same size, good.
Yeah.
What does similar mean?
Not the same.
Same shape, but not the same size. What's the only transformation that makes things look the same, but the size changes?
Dilation.
Dilation, right. So that one is choice B. All right, so next one. And here's a great example where many of the kids in this class will look right at other kids in this class and say, he is right. Because I have been preaching to you since we started going over this today, that if you didn't do well, it's not a problem with your intellect. It's a problem with your work ethic. It's a problem with what you're willing to do to be successful. So we gave you a calculator for the test, and it says product, and everybody understands that product means to multiply. So then you do 5.3 times 4.7, and as I graded the papers, what does that come out to, 24.91 or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
24.9.
Yeah, 24.91 times
Alright.
10 to the 14.
Now, well, slow down, you're getting ahead of me here. This is times 10 to the 13.
14.
Now, no, that's to the 13.
No, I know, but
Right. Now, here's the thing. Matt is all over this, like white on rice, because he knows the next step. Now, how many times have we done the next step?
Like,
What's the problem with this?
it's bigger than 1.
Right, or bigger than 10. It should be between 1 and 10. So I have to move this one decimal place to the left to make it 2.491. I left the 1 off there. And then this doesn't stay at 13 because I divided by 10 here. What do I have to do here?
14.
Multiply by 10, which makes it a 14. Now, most of you got that right. And in the course of most of you getting it right, you could see just by the sense of ease with which these guys told me what to do, how easy it is for them. Which means it really is that easy. And listen, I know who struggles more than other people in this class at math and for whom math is easier. And I know there are lots of kids in this class who don't have the greatest history of math success, but they nail this every single time because they've been there. So if you're not getting it right, you've chosen not to bother to learn to do it. It's just not important enough to you. Well, when you make decisions like that, so failure, being left back. And if you make it long enough, not graduating. And that's a really painful thing. Okay. Over here I have these two angles. They are known as alternate interior. And what you can also see is they're both acute. So, I'll go back to it. Equals, what was that, 2x plus 33? They're going to be equal to each other. So solving very quickly, I know you know how to solve this. I get 3x is 48, so x is 16. But here's the tricky part of this. They don't ask you for x. They ask you for the angle. So you have to do 5 times 16 minus 15, which works out to be 65. And over here, the one that does not equal 116 is right here because this is 4 to the negative b. Okay? Now, you've gone over each and every question. It is up to you to decide where you want to go from here. If you decide you want to do it, I have no doubt that you can be really successful. I also know Some of you are not gonna make that decision, and then you're gonna live with the consequences. I hope you have a much less painful
What about the
future.
sheet?
You work on it at home, and I will collect, hey, listen, the sheet I gave you today, you walk in the door tomorrow, I collect it, it's graded as a quiz. By the way I grade those as quizzes, I don't grade every question, I simply don't have time to. I normally grade about 7 of the questions, maybe 8, and I give you 20 or 30 points to do it, and then 10 points per question. That says no group, and when we get to the report next, you will be alone.
I never even knew.
Wait, now that you're home tomorrow,
I'm sorry, what was that? Wednesday, Thursday, and there's no more library.
Ryan, I got like Ryan, I never seen him.
you told me this last time, but I think I just forgot. What's irrational and rational?
Rational means it's going to be written as a fraction, and there are 2 very popular irrational numbers, pi, and any square root you can't figure out perfectly.
Yeah.